The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Hauss Hejny is still the second fastest Cowboy in the entire Oklahoma State roster. And yes, he evidently is still competing to not be QB2.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys.
Whenever you have a quarterback battle, that is going to grab a lot of headlines. And yes, people had sent me some things about an Oklahoma reporter, News Channel 5 or 9, something to that effect, was discussing how the intel he's getting and the information that he's receiving is that Hauss Hejny is in fact going to be the day one starter against UT Martin. And that very well may be the case, right? To my knowledge, it was Hauss Hejny and Garrett Rangel splitting reps in the spring. And then coming into the fall, Hauss Hejny was QB1. And up until this previous Sunday, he was continuing to be QB1. They gave Zane an opportunity this previous Sunday. And it appeared as though that Zane was likely to hold on to that spot. But evidently, there's some stuff matriculating out there that Hauss Hejny is not only still in contention, but perhaps he's jumped back above Zane for that coveted QB1 position. Regardless of whom is going to take the first snaps against UT Martin on the 28th, we've known about the Zane train. The Zane train has been a thing for quite some time now, and it's been building steam, right? Pun intended. But behind him, we didn't know what we were going to get in Hauss Hejny. All we knew that he was super fast and he was super athletic and he had crazy movement out in the open field. Then we were able to put it into context and going over some of the top times from their high school days, and even some of them that had some of the miles per hour and 40 times at their previous schools if they were to transfer in. And that led us to believe that Hauss Hejny was either going to be the fastest or the second fastest player on the roster. Turns out he is still the second fastest, but there's an adjustment to who's number one. We'll save some of that for segment 2. But the Hauss Hejny package that I saw the best by far on social media came from Nick the Geek on X. He said this should be the hot sauce package, and I completely agree. So if you have the same train rolling into town, you can sprinkle in some hot sauce anytime you need some extra yardage, short yardage, red zone situations. No matter what, and no matter who takes the first snap this season, I think Oklahoma State fans should feel pretty comfortable, because if Hauss Hejny is in fact going to be the dude that takes the first snaps and maybe inevitably ends up being the primary guy as opposed to Zane Flores, that means he absolutely earned it, right? There's a reason that the Oklahoma State coaching staff decided to choose Zane Flores and Hauss Hejny over the retention of Garrett Rangel and Milwaukee Smith, both of whom showed in the previous season that they were more capable in a multitude of areas over somebody like an Alan Bowman. But regardless, the Zane train has had this name for quite some time because the excitement level has been continuously building, right? I always point to one of my last conversations with Leon Johnson in regards to why did you want to come back to Oklahoma State for that extra redshirt year so bad? And he kept saying, because I want to play with Zane. That dude is special. The way he goes about his business, the way he throws the ball, the way he can understand the playbook. He was saying that Zane Flores is just a different cat. That's why he was really excited to come back for an additional year. So ever since then, my Zane train interest had been piqued. And then naturally, when they decided to bring in Hauss Hejny, and Hauss Hejny and Garrett primarily compete at QB1 in the spring, and then Hauss enters fall as QB1, only to potentially give some way to Zane Flores along the way, to now potentially the fact that he may have catapulted himself back above the Zane. Here's the deal, regardless. From my understanding, right, Hauss is a gamer. Hauss is a J.W. Walsh style absolute dude. The only real difference between him and Zane, other than the size factor, right, Zane being 6'3", 220 pounds, is Hauss had a propensity at times to scramble around and kind of rush his decision-making and kind of put the ball up in a slightly precarious situation. And Zane evidently was doing that a little bit less, which is why he was given some more QB1 opportunities as of this previous week. But from this previous Monday until now, obviously things could have very much changed. And I think that's a great sign for Oklahoma State. No matter who wins the job, no matter who takes the first snaps, no matter who ends up with the most snaps there towards the end of the season, I think it does make the most amount of sense that there's going to be some semblance of a 2-quarterback system, at least for the first couple of weeks. And some of this could very well be that, there's some gamesmanship happening. Like, no disrespect to UT Martin, but UT Martin lost a decent number of their top players from this previous season. So the team that won 4 straight conference titles is probably not the same UT Martin that unfortunately is going to begin their season in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So maybe whoever starts game 1 is systematically not going to start game 2. I have no idea. As it pertains to the exact who's going to take the first snaps and who's going to take the snaps in game 2, I don't know. But I do know that it makes sense that both of these dudes play. And I also think that it makes a ton of sense that we try to give Oregon something that they cannot take into consideration before that game, right? So whether it be different wrinkles from the play calling system or different alignments that we want Oregon to pay a little bit of extra attention to, whether it be packaging or the individual dudes, at the end of the day, what matters is if Haas Haney is QB1 in Stillwater, America, that means a considerable amount because the staff has been extremely high on Zane Flores the entire time. And again, they didn't go with the quote-unquote safe picks. I'm not saying that Garrett Rangel, Milwaukee Smith were 7 to 8 win dudes, but it seems as though the coaching staff kind of felt that way. And they kind of felt like Zane Flores and Haas Haney have higher ceilings. So Zane Flores and Haas Haney could potentially get Oklahoma State in that 9 to 10 win category. The more I hear about practice, the more I hear about the intensity and the fact that they're having to compete for their spots and compete for jobs and compete to even be on the roster. Because if you're not doing what you're supposed to do and you're not showing it out on the football field, you can be designated as a DSA. And if you're a DSA, then you don't have, automatic scholarships and things of that nature. So there is a system in Stillwater that if you do not do what you're supposed to do on a daily basis and also take care of business on the football field, that you could get bumped down to a very sketchy spot, no matter where you came from, how much you're getting paid. And I think that's going to be more visible than anywhere at the quarterback position. Both of these dudes were very sought after. Both of these dudes could have gone almost anywhere to have a transfer portal moment or even coming out of high school. But they chose to stay at Oklahoma State. The coaching staff chose to ride into 2025 100% on them. They took out the safe plays in Garrett Rangel and Milwaukee Smith, and they decided to go for the higher ceiling. But this has been a Zane train thing happening for quite some time now. So if Haas Haney does, in fact, leapfrog Zane once again, that's because he absolutely 100% earned it. And that's what has me the most excited. I don't necessarily care who takes the first snaps because at the end of the day, they're both going to play probably a decent amount against UT Martin, and they're both going to provide some things that is specifically designed to give Oregon some extra eye candy. Whether we're actually going to implement it or use it or completely get rid of it, that's the point, is Oregon's not going to know either. So we could have Oregon preparing for maybe Haas Haney and Rodney Fields, and then we could show up and they roll out Zane Flores and Trent Howland or Zane Flores and Caleb Hicks. I mean, they could even get really creative and bring both of them into the fold. I think that would be phenomenal. And Zane did play RB3. I know I bring this up all the time. He was the official depth chart RB3 last spring after a couple of running back injuries. You don't put somebody at that spot if you don't think he can at least be somewhat competent about giving the defense a decent look. So the idea of having Haas Haney and Zane Flores and Sam Jackson V, who was a quarterback at TCU, a quarterback at Cal, then he switched to wide receiver at Auburn. I mean, you go back and look some of his highlights. Some of his better highlights as a quarterback at TCU was unfortunately against Oklahoma State, where I think he put up like 250, 260-ish, 100 yards against the Cowboys as a QB. So That would be a fun package to have. If you look in the backfield, you got Haas Haney, Zane Flores, and Sam Jackson the fifth. You don't know what's coming. And if you were to sprinkle some Gavin Freeman into that equation as well, or Caleb Hicks, or Rodney Fields, or Sesi Valahi, I do think that there's a number of things that we can do in the first couple of weeks to make things more difficult on our opposition. But the only way we can pull that off is with the athleticism, with the upgrade in talent, with the upgrades in speed. But we have that. And yes, Hassani, no matter what happens, right now, he's still the second fastest player on the Oklahoma State roster, which would put him the upper percentile for the fastest players in the country, point blank period, at any position.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe in the Green Bay Packers, that they would win Super Bowl 59, or maybe you have some division winner dark horses you'd like to parlay. Visit the FanDuel Sportsbook app and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
What position battles are still unsettled at the midway point of Texas camp? We'll dive in.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns.
There are a number of position battles that are still going on, and today we're going to focus on 4 of them that have yet to be decided. Again, we are 16 days away from Texas and Ohio State. That's right. 2 weeks from Saturday, we'll get to watch Longhorn football again, and that is a beautiful thing. We've got 2 on offense and 2 on defense. We'll start with the defensive side of the ball, and we'll begin with the nickel position, the star position in Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. One of the most interesting storylines of fall camp has been Michael Taaffe getting a lot of work at nickel. Of course, Taaffe started every game for the Texas defense in 2024, but he started every game at safety, and he was one of the best in America at that position. He's still been getting plenty of reps at safety, but with the return of Derek Williams Jr. and the rise of Jelani McDonald, that has allowed Pete Kwiatkowski to cross-train Michael Taaffe and put him at some other spots on the field. In last Saturday's scrimmage, the first of fall camp, Michael Taaffe, unsurprisingly, was out there with the number 1 defense, but maybe surprisingly, he was the starting nickel, and it was Derek Williams and Jelani McDonald working at safety. There's another fall scrimmage coming up this weekend. Are we going to see that again? That is something to monitor. Now, it's not just Michael Taaffe. The aforementioned Jelani McDonald has been getting some run at star as well. So maybe Texas is going to have some packages where Taaffe is at nickel and McDonald is at safety, and some the other way around. But yeah, Michael Taaffe, could he end up being this team's starting nickel? Does PK feel like that gives his defense the best chance to be successful against the high-powered Ohio State offense? Yeah, they've got a new quarterback. Yeah, they've got a couple of new running backs and some new offensive line. They're still going to be really, really good. So you wonder about that, but you also wonder where Grayson Littleton and Wardell Mack fit in the equation. I mean, Littleton has been the top freshman so far for Texas, and honestly, maybe the top storyline for the entire team in the first 2.5 weeks of fall camp. He's been incredible, and he's gotten a ton of work with the first team defense. So is he still competing for a starting job? Could he really win a starting job on what could be the deepest secondary in all of college football? Something to monitor. We played the cut from Manny Muhammad last week praising Grayson Littleton. Everyone's been praising Grayson Littleton, coaches and players alike. That guy has burst on the scene during his first training camp at Texas. And again, getting reps with the number 1 defense is hard anywhere, but especially hard with all of the talent that Texas has. Could he be the starting nickel? And then Michael Taaffe moves back to safety. We'll see. Wardell Mack in his second year, he's also been really good too. So how many snaps does he get? Where does he fit in that nickel rotation? Something to watch. Who's the starter there? What does the rotation look like? That's position battle number one. And we're kind of crying from a yacht here. It's not like, oh, Texas doesn't have anybody good enough to play that position. It's like, well, they got 3 or 4 guys who might be good enough to play there. So what do they end up doing? That's number one. Number two, we're going to stick with the defense here with this one, and we're going to stick with the secondary, the corner opposite Manny Muhammad. We know Manny Muhammad is one of those starting cornerback spots locked down. There's no mystery there at all. He's earned that with his play over the last 2 seasons. But the other cornerback, not quite as cut and dry. You've got Jalen Gilbo, who, of course, is making the Jahdae Barron move, going from star to outside corner. He's the leader in the clubhouse. Obviously, you're hoping Jalen Gilbo can be the second coming of Jahdae Barron. Barron won the Thorpe Award, ended up as a first-round pick. That position change worked out really well for him. It worked out really well for the Texas defense, too. So Jalen Gilbo, whether he's Jahdae Barron or not, he's probably the favorite. He's been with the number ones more often than not, including in last weekend's scrimmage. But Kobe Black is there, too, and he's fighting. And he's really good. And he's taken a lot of strides dating back to the spring, over the summer, and now into fall camp as well. If he keeps taking those steps, there is perhaps a realistic path for him to be a starter on this defense. Now, he's going to play either way. The loser of this second quarterback competition is going to be the first corner off the bench, and they're going to be a significant part in this secondary. But Kobe Black fighting for some starting reps. I think Gilbo is going to be out there for the first snaps against Ohio State. But how many snaps Black gets maybe depends on how he performs in the latter half of fall camp. And again, I think there is a realistic path to where he can be this team's number 2 corner. You think about the receivers that Ohio State has, obviously with Jeremiah Smith, but Carnell Tate is back from a year ago. Brandon Inniss, a former 5-star. I mean, it's Ohio State. They can lose 2 or 3 5-star receivers to the NFL every year. They're still going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 waiting in the wings. So whoever wins that job is obviously going to be faced with a tall task in week 1. That's an important position battle to watch. Again, I think Gilbo's really good. I think Kobe Black's really good. Which of those guys emerges as the true number 2 corner? Now moving over to the offense, let's talk about the backup quarterback battle. I know we're talking about backups here, not quite as intriguing as the 2 we just looked at, but backup quarterback at Texas is always important. Texas doesn't get to the SEC title game without Arch Manning last year. Texas doesn't get to and win the Big 12 title in 2023 without Malik Murphy starting a couple of conference games that season. And you could go back way further than that. I mean, it's incredibly rare for a Longhorn starting quarterback to stay healthy throughout an entire season. Of course, we hope that happens with Arch, and I'll knock on wood to do my part that it does, but history tells you that it probably won't, because it usually doesn't here in Austin. So the backup quarterback is important, and this competition is important. And we're still trying to figure out who QB2 is. We've spent some time talking about the Troy transfer, Matthew Caldwell, and how good of a job he's done as a player, but also as a leader, a guy who came in after the spring. He's the new guy in that locker room. Trey Owens has been there for a couple of years. Sometimes can be tough as a new player to kind of command leadership and get everybody to respect you. Sounds like Matthew Caldwell has done a really good job of that so far. Again, the play has been solid, but also the leadership has been there too. Talking about a guy who's been now at 4 different colleges and a guy who has a ton of experience under his belt. He is commanding the respect of those other dudes in that Longhorn locker room, and he's come in here and raised the bar for both Trey Owens and KJ Lacey. And the good news is those guys have responded in a positive manner. Competition breeds excellence. This competition is bringing out the best in that Texas quarterback room. I'm excited about the future of KJ Lacey. I feel like I'm yelling. I don't know why I'm yelling. But this is a 2-horse race for QB2 between Caldwell and Trey Owens. In scrimmage number 1, Matthew Caldwell led drives of 13 and 16 plays. It's pretty good. Trey Owens was also responsible for the lone turnover that the Texas offense had last week. So perhaps advantage Caldwell after that first scrimmage. It's definitely too early to declare a winner. And honestly, I don't know when we're going to find out who wins this. Like when the first depth chart comes out game week, there may be an or between Caldwell and Owens' name. So we might not really know who won until one of those guys comes into a game first. Hopefully, Texas has a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter against Ohio State, and they could take Arch out. That's the dream scenario right there. But maybe Sark will give us an answer. Maybe the depth chart will tell the story. Maybe someone will ask, and he'll give a clear-cut answer leading up to the first game. But as of right now, that is an important battle that has yet to be decided. So these next couple of scrimmages will be huge for those QBs. And last but not least, number 4, I went back and forth on this one. Defensive tackle is one worth watching. The battle for RB2 behind Trey Wisner is one worth watching. We've talked about those a lot, so I wanted to focus on a position that we haven't talked about as much, and that's tight end. Now, like quarterback, the starter has been decided, but the second tight end I don't think has. And, unlike quarterback, 2 tight ends are going to be on the field at the same time a lot in this offense. You hope you don't see a lot of Matthew Caldwell or Trey Owens. You do hope, and you should plan on seeing a lot of multiple tight end looks for Texas this year. I mean, that's a staple of the Steve Sarkisian offense. He runs 11 personnel, 1 back and 1 tight end, more than any other, but 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends is his second most utilized personnel package. At least it was last year. Jack Andrews is your starter. Again, no mystery there. I know he's new, but he's your best option by far. 56 catches, 623 yards, 2 touchdowns last year at Cal. All of the other tight ends have a combined 0 career college catches. So kind of obvious who number 1 is, but who's number 2? Who gets the nod in those 12 personnel sets? Is it Spencer Shannon, the 6'7", 252-pound redshirt sophomore? Is it Jordan Washington, the 6'4", 264-pound true sophomore, who apparently has put on 40 pounds since arriving on campus last year? Could it be Nick Townsend, the true freshman? Didn't enroll early, so maybe he's a bit behind the 8 ball, but sounds like he's off to a pretty good start. Amari Winston would have been another name that I mentioned. He's hurt right now, dealing with a shoulder injury. Sounds like that's going to bleed into the regular season. So as of this moment, I think he is out on the tight end 2 chatter. Maybe he re-enters the chat when he is fully healthy. I think Spencer Shannon, I keep using the leader in the clubhouse expression. I'll use it again. I think that's him right now. But Jordan Washington has been making a lot of noise in fall camp. He had a great first scrimmage. Folks have been raving about his after-catch ability. Sounds like he was the best tight end altogether in Texas's first scrimmage. And, it's interesting. In the first half, it was Andrews and Shannon working with the number 1 offense. In the second half, it was Andrews and Washington running with the first team offense. So is it Spencer Shannon? Is it Jordan Washington? Do we see both of those guys plus Jack Andrews in Columbus 2 weeks from Saturday? That's something that I think is yet to be determined and will be over the next 16 days. So keep an eye out on that one too. All right. Would love to hear from y'all. Your thoughts on those 4 position battles. What do you think I missed? What else are you going to be paying close attention to over the last 2 weeks and change of camp?
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Deshaun Womack has a dominant day, and the linebackers are looking really good. Let's bring in Dalen Flowers and talk all about it.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Deshaun Womack was a force in his return to full duty. He alternated with Prince Will Amon-Mielen. I've got theories, and we're going to flesh them out over the next 15 minutes, but that's a very good sign that Womack is showing out today.
Yeah, it looks good. And again, you Pete Golden mentioned in his press today. I won't get too far into that right now, but just having multiple guys at different positions to have a lot of different packages and personnel within that defensive line is important for what they want to do at Ole Miss and what Pete Golden's system is like. And as well, having a lot of guys, but a lot of those guys being versatile and having Deshaun Womack there was really beneficial for the line today. His versatility as a defensive lineman to get downhill, be a force in stopping the run, and create some disadvantages for the offense today was really eye catching. And his mindset as a young guy, but as well having that experience at LSU, transferring from there and being from Baltimore as well, he's seen the ranks of a lot of different ways the game is played and really confines well. And so I think the different ways that Pete Golden is going to attack this year in terms from a rushing and maybe a blitz package type of system within his defense front. So Deshaun Womack looked really, really good today. And this is kind of the meat part of the fall camp where you kind of have those guys that are, competing at the highest level to now prove that, I can be a starter for you, or I can do this for you, or I can be at this position and excel at those positions for you. So allow me to show you what I can do. And Deshaun Womack and a collection of other guys within the defensive team are proving that right now. And I think it's important not only at this exact moment because the first game is coming up, but another scrimmage for the team is coming up this weekend. And so being able to solidify those roles and those moments for certain players like Deshaun Womack and other guys is really important. And I think it speaks on the totality of their abilities, but as well what type of players Pete Golding and his staff are looking at when they're recruiting from the transfer portal. Who are they eyeing? Are they guys from other conferences, and what do those guys do, or what are these guys that they're getting from the SEC schools that do? What do they do really good? How can they be more of a advantage to this Ole Miss team than maybe they were at their other SEC schools?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And you mentioned the scrimmage on Saturday coming up. My sources inside the building said they're treating that scrimmage like it's a Super Bowl. They are trying to get as hyped as they could because competition is so important. Everything around this team is big. And this is the last opportunity before the Georgia State game to go out and have a full contact scrimmage.
Yeah, I think that these scrimmages right now, last weekend, I think from hearing from Lane and the players throughout the weekend, the coordinators today, they learned so much last weekend. And whether that's from a quarterback perspective, the offensive line, the secondary, there were so many takeaways for the coaches from last week. They put those things into list within this week's practice. I feel like there's the certain mental standpoint of the players this year of this week has been a little bit different than the past couple of weeks. I think they're putting everything into the marbles this week, not only because, this is our week 3 for camp is kind of that really meaty part, in my opinion, for players. They've been doing 2 days like crazy all week. And, this is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, the last scrimmage before the official first game of the season against Georgia State. So this is the time now for players, like I said, to show up and compete and truly build cohesion with one another, to excel, build that chemistry, and show out and make plays happen. This is the moment where guys have to step up if they want the opportunity within the season. This is the time where you're going to either be able to show you can play or you can't. And, those moments are going to come up within the rest of this week's camp and the scrimmage Saturday. And I think it's really important. I think these players on both sides of the ball really do need some game speed experiences right now. And I think their scrimmage is going to be coming at a really important time for both sides of the ball for this Ole Miss team.
Yeah, one thing about Pete Golding, whenever he gets in there and he does the football coach thing, it was 22 minutes of stuff that was actually relevant to hear. It's not like nothing against the Lane Kiffin press conference, nothing against even a Charlie Weiss press conference. Pete Golding's press conference hit a little bit different. For instance, he talked about the defensive back room, and of course, he's a bright guy just rattling stuff off, but Cedric Beavers was back out there at full speed. That's a big deal. He mentioned Dante Core, who is on the ascension, on the rise with what's going on. Antonio Kite is kind of the leader in the cornerback room at the moment. Ricky Fletcher has a lot of height and speed. And then he mentioned Chris Graves at the back end. I think the cornerback position, they are a lot further along than they thought they were going to be whenever this fall camp started.
Yeah, and one huge thing I think for that is the availability of Jalen Braxton. Pete mentioned in his pressers today, just, you may see him at free safety, strong safety. You may see him at the corner this year, depending on the packages that they run. And they've tried him out at a lot of different roles as well, and have watched a lot of critical film with him to understand where he could be great at and how he can be complacent in a lot of different positions. I said this with my guy Zach Moretz, kind of chatted earlier today, but there are guys that, are maybe big and bring a different bit of athleticism to the secondary, and there are other guys maybe a little bit undersized, but, maybe a little bit more quicker and have better hands. And he may get downhill to read slot routes against wide receivers a little bit better compared to different corners or secondary guys. I think that's important to have depth in those versatility players in the secondary. When you're playing in the SEC, you're going to face receivers that may be 6'4", 205, and you're also going to see those guys that may just be 5'11", 195, but run a 4.40. So it's great to have those guys in the secondary to do a plethora of things really good. And I think now hearing Pete Golden speaking in the presser today, we really just sought out what he's looking for when he's recruiting guys out of high school and in the portal, and specifically how do they not only advantage his system, but how can he make Ricky Fletcher do something really good that he wasn't able to do at his previous school, but fit the system that he's running here at Ole Miss? How is he able to utilize certain guys that they do really good, but maybe tweak and also keep the same some of the things that maybe they didn't do so good? So having the depth within the secondary is going to be important for Ole Miss this year. When you're facing the good amount of quarterbacks that Ole Miss sees this year, you're going to have to be able to be on the move a lot and be able to be adaptable and change due to opposition and different schemes of packages. So having a lot of guys out there in the corner secondary is going to be huge for Ole Miss, but a lot quicker than I will honestly say I thought. It's coming along a lot better, and from my perspective, for that secondary and for the corners in Pete Golden's system than as quickly as I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And a lot of this has to do with recruiting rankings and a top 250 or a top 300 to where there's one system. He's a 4-star player, and that's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of this is, and Pete Golding talked about it in his press conference today, and it was fantastic. I love hearing stuff like that because it's absolutely true. Depending on what you do, depends on how many stars you actually are. System fit is so important when it comes to where you end up. You need to go where you fit, not go where the name goes, not follow the money. You need to go with the place that's going to do the best for you. For instance, you can take a 5-star running back and everybody's going to go, okay, well, he's probably a 5-star running back. He's going to be good. He'd be good anywhere that he is. He's a 5-star running back. If he was an A-back at Navy, he might not be a good running back.
Yeah.
He might be a 3-star running that A-back position. It all depends on where you go, what matters to each player. And Deshaun Womack, who was a 5-star at LSU, they had multiple defensive coordinators. There was not much continuity there. Mm-hmm. If Pete Golding turns Deshaun Womack into the dominant player that he was today, that's a win. That's a system fit. That's a chance where when he recruits, it's like, hey, Jake Krull, you want to go to Oklahoma? That's great. Fantastic. If that doesn't work out, we're here. We think you're a system fit. Go find out there if you are or not.
Yeah, it's important. And I think it speaks on the importance of stability in whether you're in the college ranks or you're in professional as well. And it speaks on the culture of Ole Miss, being able to bring back the entire staff on both sides of the ball is really important. You when you're able to recruit guys, you're selling a home, a future for these players. And whether or not they commit to you right out of high school, it's not something to lose your mind about anymore when you get a guy like Caleb Odom, who you recruit really strongly out of high school, but goes to Alabama. But a year later, he's now in Oxford and with the Ole Miss helmet on. So, recruiting is strong, but also having the goals set for what you want to do properly is important. And when you have coaching stability, when you have great retainment within your staff, and each position group knows what the coordinator wants and what they're looking for, what's going to be able to set the Ole Miss standard, that's huge. And that's not only huge within the program, but it's huge when you're going to guys' houses and recruiting them and selling them a pitch to be like, Oxford is the place for you, and you can become an NFL player when you're playing for the Ole Miss Rebels. That's huge. So it speaks on the volumes of the culture and what Lane Kiffin has been able to do throughout now his 6th year here, not only build a national brand, but build a great culture for coaches that have now stayed the course and players that have stayed the course. That you see so many times at other schools, a lot of guys that, may not get the opportunity year 1 or year 2 and then go somewhere else. But you see so many guys, especially on that defense, Tyler Banks, and a few other guys, even, some of the guys on the defensive front that may not have gotten a chance year 1 or year 2, but have stuck the course because of the culture here at Ole Miss and are now seeing the success and reaping the benefits because of it.